Anyway, hey, so I'm Red McCall. A lot of you guys know me. Not everybody knows me. Some people we got from the public page, so that's cool. I've been the president of Oklahoma Atheists for a little over a year. I've been the outreach coordinator for the group, though, for about 3 years. Before I came along, there was nobody that regularly worked it. I like doing outreach, so they made a position for me, so that was kind of cool. And so in doing so, I've done debate panels, discussion panels for atheism in different classes, a couple here at UCO. Mainly, I've done a lot of booths for AOK. So running outreach booths, we got a lot of people that come up to the booth, and they always seem to have the same questions. And so that's what we're going to kind of cover tonight, is just a lot of those questions that I constantly get. So there we go. So now that number, the number over here to the side, is actually 1,112. So we went up even. Now, if you're not familiar, there's quite a few people here that are not on Meetup. We got from the Facebook side. Meetup.com is just kind of what the name entails. If you like knitting, there's a group for that. If you like crocheting and doing mountain biking and all sorts of different other activities, Meetup.com hosts meetups for all that. One of the things is atheist groups, atheist community groups, use it throughout the entire world. There's over 700 of them, and we are number 12 currently. We're one of the 12 largest communities in the world. So that's big, that's nice. And so a lot of that is just word of mouth and being really active. I see a lot of the groups that are above us that we're gaining speed on, and a lot of them are not as active as us. So, plus, big thing we have that's an advantage here is when you're in the Bible Belt, you get a lot of people that obviously don't want to go towards that, and they look for the community outside of church, that all their church friends have that community. So, we're going to cover some basics here, and because we have questions that constantly come up. What is atheism? This isn't, we're just going to cover some basics before we get into the questions, but to really kind of know what we're talking about, we kind of have to talk about what is atheism in general. So atheism, better defined by theism, is the belief in supernatural and belief in a deity. And so atheism is not believing in supernatural. It's kind of like it's symmetrical or asymmetrical. So kind of the same idea. So it's basically just a rejection of all deities. Pretty simple. So the common misconception that it is a rejection of God. It is like anti-Christian or anti-God. It's really just nothing. It's only a term that describes what you're not. And unfortunately, that's the way it is here. So many people go to church, you're going to have to pinhole yourself into what you are not. So another big thing is it's not a religion. It's a big one. You got a lot of people that are like, well, atheism is a religion too. No, it's not. Much like bald is not hair color, alpha is not a TV channel, abstinence is not a sexual position, naked is not a clothing style, not collecting stamps is not a hobby. So, once again, we go from atheism that we had to define, and now we have to define what is religion. Merriam-Webster. So, as you can see, there's quite a few different definitions. The one that really is the common is number 2 there. Personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, religious beliefs, and religious practices. For those people that say that they don't have religion, they have a relationship with Jesus Christ. If they follow the Bible and they follow the beliefs and the commandments in the Bible, and that's where they get the moral code from, they have a religion. And there's the semantics, it's the definition of it. So atheism is not that. We don't have an institutionalized set of religious beliefs or practices or anything like that. So atheism is really more a conclusion, not necessarily a belief. As the age of the internet, information age comes about, we have a lot more people that are kind of naturally going towards skepticism, more naturally getting away from religion. And since that rise has come about, it's kind of made a divide where they think, oh, well, we never really heard about atheism a long time ago. Now there's this new atheism. There's really, the only difference between the old atheism and the new atheism is simply that. We're not shutting up. So as you get into a community group, and that's why this is really important, is you start to feel really empowered. You start to understand that you're not alone. And so you feel a little bit more, you get a little more courage to be able to stand up against people. So that's all it really boils down to. The unfortunate thing is you have to defend your atheism a lot, especially in this part of the country. The unfair advantage that they have is that they have one book that they have to learn from. And so even if you have the Bible, and it's taking a little bit for some people. A lot of them, as you know, a lot of them don't even read the Bible. They go to church, their pastor reads the Bible for them, and then they give them all the little good candy parts, the nice things, not any of the bad stuff. And so really, not only do they not really have to read the Bible, they don't have to know anything about everything else. Whenever it comes to science and what we have to know. God gets blamed for a lot of things. There's this thing called God of the gaps. A lot of people have probably heard of it. And that's basically where there's a gap in scientific knowledge, people insert God. They did it with lightning, earthquakes, volcanoes, a lot of different things, where they would just blame plate tectonics. We understand how the atmosphere can be able to produce a charge. So the things they blame God for is fewer and fewer. But there's still a lot of people here that don't know about those, the science behind a lot of those things. They still think that childbirth is a miracle. You know, everybody has childbirth. I mean, a lot of people have childbirth. So the unfortunate thing is that there's a lot of books that we have to read and to be able to, or a lot of information we really need to know to be able to combat a lot of that. And that's what we're really trying to focus on a little bit tonight, is going through a lot of the different things that are attached. So now we're going to get into some of the common questions from believers. And the absolute highest one that we get constantly, and Michelle runs a lot of outreach booths with me, we get this all the time. What if you're wrong? God does exist. Wouldn't it be better to just believe? Yeah. I heard the name of the guy. So this is Pascal's wager is what this is. I used to hear this all the time whenever I was a young little Christian ginger. And, and what it is, and even though we never really saw this particular truth table, is there a God or is there not a God? And the choice is if you believe or you don't believe. Well, as you can see, atheism doesn't offer anything except for burning in hell or nothing. Belief in God obviously giving you eternal joy. There are some problems that are inherent with that. Which version of God do you believe in? There's so many different religions out there. This is assuming that Pascal's version of God was the correct God. That's simply not the issue. Whenever you're dealing with these people, because they always want to say, well, isn't it just better to believe? I mean, it's just might as well. Well, no, because what can happen is that. So, get into a little bit of problem with that. So, this is a little bit more of an exploded chart of what I was talking about. So, let's say your belief system was Mormon, but it turns out that Judaism is the correct one. Well, you believed in God, but you believed in God the wrong way. You worshipped in the wrong way. There's only one option on there that is a win-win. Satanism. I don't advocate that, but it just kind of shows the BS behind what Pascal's wager offers. There's another big thing, and it is that belief is not a choice. You can't just simply choose to believe something that you really don't believe. Try as you might, you can try to think that your car is going to take you 800 miles. You can really, really try to believe that. But if you've never had any instance of your car taking you 800 miles, it's always taking you 4, as you get about 380, 390, you're going to start going, oh, my car's running out of gas. Because you don't actually believe it. That's called pretending. There's a huge difference between believing and pretending. The 7 deadly sins. You know, we have greed, gluttony, lust. We have a lot of these different things. A lot of those are purely thought crimes. It's thought crimes because God allegedly can read your mind. So if you're going to just fake it and trying to get into heaven, and God knows you're just believing so you don't have to go to hell, He's probably going to know that if you actually believe in that version, or the 7 deadly sins. So, belief is not a choice. You can't believe. You can't just choose to believe. So Jesus actually existed. You're getting it. Yay. I was waiting to see how long I was going to say. So Jesus actually existed. Unfortunately, outside of the Bible, there is no proof whatsoever that Jesus actually existed. There are some time points where, like, the Romans did execute somebody who claimed to be the Son of God around the time, but it's such a huge window of about 150 years that it's not very accurate at all. They kept really good records of who they executed. Just paper trail, I guess. stone trail or whatever. So even things like this, which is outside of the Bible, is proven to be fake. The Dead Sea Scrolls, a lot of people try to point to the Dead Sea Scrolls as a first-hand account, but it's not a first-hand account. It's just words written on paper, you know? There's nothing there that actually says that this is Jesus writing or anything like that. It's false. It's been proven to be false. So they try to use that as another thing. But that still doesn't mean that the guy actually existed. If he did exist, it doesn't mean he's the Son of God. So try as you might. Try as you might, you're not going to be able to find it. So to be able to use the Bible as a manner of saying that, well, I know God exists because of the Bible. I mean, that doesn't make any sense either. Because we have the Quran, that proves that version that Allah exists, or that God exists, or Mr. Tickle. So just because we can be able to I can prove that there was a guy named Clark Kent or Peter Parker ever existed, doesn't mean that means that the whole comic book is correct. Or if we ever did find a guy by the name of Jesus or Yeshua that was well documented outside of Christianity, that still doesn't mean that he was the Son of God. So that's the point that we really try to get to that. So can you prove to me that God doesn't exist? No. So here we get into the problem of proving a negative. And I'll kind of expand on that because we ran into some troubles last time. And you can't prove a negative unless the positive has been asserted. So, like, yes, I can prove to you that your windshield wipers don't work by simply turning them on and proving to you that they do work. So thus I proved the negative. Or that a door does not open, I can simply unlock it. Yes, the door opens. I proved that negative because there was proof in the first place that it existed. Thus I can prove it again against it. But when it comes to claims like God, prove to me that God doesn't exist, that you're not going to be able to do that. And so we get into things that like Hitchens' razor, which what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So pretty strong. For somebody to say, well, prove to me that God doesn't exist, they have to give you something to go off of, because otherwise you're not going to be able to dismiss it at all. Likewise, one of my favorite things that I like to use against people is, prove to me that I can't fly. I have photographic proof that I'm flying. I've convinced people that I can fly. They're convinced that I can fly. Prove to me that I can fly. And I've actually used this argument as one of my favorite ones, and they say, well, prove to me that you can fly. Yes, I got you. Because I get that quite a bit. It's like, well, prove to me I can't fly. And they're like, well, okay, so let's see it. You're understanding. That's exactly what the problem is. So it gets into another thing called circular reasoning, where like they believe that God exists because the Bible says that God exists. But it leads to this. But how can you be sure it's the Word of God? Because the Bible says so. But why do you believe the Bible? Well, the Bible's infallible. How do you know it's infallible? Because it's the Word of God. There's a lot of things, and that's why the picture of the Quran came up beforehand. Spider-Man, things like that, is that those also say the same thing. It's also the same circular reasoning argument. Just like that. Yeah. It's essentially the exact same argument. And so it doesn't really get anywhere. Well, then you get into art. They ask a lot, well, how can you be moral without the Bible? There's a distinction between Christian morals versus human morals. Christian morals, if they don't pick and choose, say things like, if anybody works on a Sunday, you must kill them. You know, that gay marriage is an abomination, or homosexuality is an abomination, or wearing clothes of two different fabrics, or eating shellfish, or things like that. Those are Christian morals. They can kind of pick and choose, and they try to figure out which ones kind of apply to them. Those are Christian morals. Human morals really boil down to this, the golden rule. That's just an example. There's silver rule and bronze rule, which is kind of along the same lines, but overall the golden rule. Now, a lot of people say that comes from Christianity. Well, first of all, sorry, let me back up. This poster is actually hanging up in the United Nations, so it's really well documented. Nobody has a problem with it. They say, yes, this is where it says in my religious text. But Christianity, in this part of the country, is touted as being, well, that's a Christian rule. No, it's not. Because we have things like native spirituality, which ended up happening in parallel with Christianity. So they were completely geographically isolated, but yet they came up with the same rule. You have things like Taoism, which predate Christianity, but still came to the same rule. The same thing with a lot of these other religions. You know, even though they grew up in parallel, maybe they had geographic content, or they were able to have interaction with Christianity. That doesn't mean it's a Christian rule, because it obviously predates other religions, like native spirituality is completely separate. So it's more of a golden rule than it is anything. It's kind of the law of the land, if you think about it. We built a lot of our laws based off of the golden rule. You do this to me, I'm going to do something back to you. Well, obviously you can't. The eye for an eye thing has been kind of, people backed up with that one. They were like, well, I'm not going to take his arm off or poke him in the eye or anything like that. But they do want to separate you away from society. And in the Old Testament, God used to smite people left and right. If you did anything bad, you were smited and God took care of it. But he hasn't done that for a long time. And because he never did it at all, because it's only found in the Bible him doing that. Because outside the Bible, once again, there's no proof of that. So even still, we as people rely more on our own instincts and what we end up doing. And we work faster than God, because God doesn't smite people. And thus we build prisons. Basically, it's God not working fast enough to our liking, so we put people away, as opposed to being part of his plan, or God taking care of things. We're saying, God isn't taking care of things the way we want, so we're going to put them away. It's never really made sense. How can you explain the miracle of prayer? Probabilities, placebo effect, different religions, and what power of prayer exactly? When people pray, they know that there are certain things that they can pray for, and it might happen. They know that there are certain things that they can't pray for at all, and they're not going to get it. No one's ever prayed to get an arm grown back. Well, duh. But you can pray for things like cancer. You can pray for the lottery. You can pray for other things, because it could be a misdiagnosis. It could be, just obviously probabilities that you could win the lottery. But for those people, it's what they call confirmation bias. It's them saying, yes, I hit it, But the lottery is a good example, because it's somebody's going to hit the lottery. Somebody's going to hit the lottery. And if it's in the United States, it's 83% chance that they're going to end up being Christian. And whenever they hit the lottery, are they going to say, well, I prayed for that, so God answered my prayers. He wanted you to win the lottery. That doesn't make any sense. Well, the power of prayer, God gave me the strength and confidence I needed. Okay, so this is where the placebo effect comes in, because the things that give you strength and confidence that you needed are also prevalent in acupuncture. You can also get it with hypnosis. You can also end up getting it with just a generic placebo. It works because if you believe it works, and you trust in it, then there's a good chance that it's going to happen. If you want to lose weight, if you want to quit smoking, and you put your faith in something that you don't quite understand, but has been seen to work numerous times, then it's going to have the placebo effect. Once again, that's how hypnosis works. That's how acupuncture works. And that's how prayer works. It's based off of that, because it never gives you a tangible result like growing an arm back, which would be truly miraculous. So, other thing is that it's really letting God know that you have a better plan than him. Because there's a lot of people out there that are literalists and say, well, God has a plan for everybody. But then why pray? There's a lot of people that need guidance and things like that and say, well, I prayed to God and he gave me guidance. Well, it's always information that you already knew. That's pretty much my story. That's kind of, whenever I started learning psychology, I really started looking at prayer and trying to figure out, has he ever really told me things that I didn't already know? Maybe I just forgot. So, prayer, it's a fun one. Why do you care so much? We aren't hurting anyone. Better summed up by Ricky Gervais. It's true. I'm a crime a lot. But really, yes. I mean, why do we care? It seems like such a harmless thing. So what if I believe in God? Well, it's not about you believing in God. It's about people like you changing the laws for everybody, changing things for everybody else. So we have things like abortion, which is religiously backed. We have the death penalty that is religiously backed. Things like equal rights, like gay marriage, the women's right to vote. We had to overcome a lot of that. Slavery was a big deal. Fair taxes. We have to actually pay higher taxes because churches don't pay taxes, because they're a religious organization. If they paid it, should hopefully lower the ceiling a little bit. Things like global warming, which is obviously religiously backed, where they say in the Bible that after the flood, God said, well, I'll never do this again. And that's subject to interpretation, because it'll say, well, either flood the world again or destroy the world. But that's their excuse. It's like, well, God would never allow that, because he said in the Bible that he would do that. So it's kind of one of those things, once people finally accept, everybody accepts global warming, they're going to be like, well, maybe it was misinterpreted. We care because of the golden rule. If I believe something that a lot of people knew to be false, I would really want you to tell me. I'm sure I'm probably going to get it at the end of this Q&A if I mess up anything. Or during the Q&A. But yeah, if I still believed in Santa as an adult because I had confirmation bias because I saw my uncle maybe sneak in with a Santa costume, then that was my belief. And yes, I believed it because I saw it, but it was my uncle when my uncle was like, well, I want to tell you. I would want that to actually happen because he went to others. So religious wars, obviously, or wars just in general, are mostly religiously backed. Public school education, another big thing, trying to sneak in creationism to impede kids with their education. Liquor laws, it's a small one, but it's still something we see all the time every Sunday.
Not small to me.
It impedes scientific research. That's a huge one. Anytime, I talked about God of the gaps earlier, when you start to claim, well, it's because God did it, you basically are saying, I give up. I'm not going to research this any further. And so it impedes a lot of scientific research. And that's the reason why 93% of the National Academy of Sciences, 93% of its members don't register as any kind of religion at all. Some of them are atheists, some of them are agnostic, some of them are just completely secular, but they're not Christian or any particular religion. 93% of them are. There's a reason for that. Why is evolution such a big deal? It's a pretty big deal. There's two main things that will immediately cause the Bible to kind of fall in on itself. Evolution, because that's the creation story. If creationism is wrong, then it throws the whole thing into whack. If there's life on other planets, it means that we weren't created as being special. God had other planets, so what makes us so special? So those are the two main things that people have problems with. But so if evolution is true, then Adam and Eve didn't exist, because we can go back further. But if Adam and Eve never existed, and this is where this kind of compounds. If they never sinned, then there was no original sin. If there's no original sin, then there's no reason to come back and save us. So that's why it's such a big deal. I know really, really staunch Christians that I've had the debate. I've shown them all the fossils, and they just can't bring themselves to believe that evolution is true because it does exactly this. So. But evolution is just a theory. A lot of us have heard that, I'm sure. Well, so is gravity. Gravity is just a theory. So is historic method of delivery is a theory. But really, we need to talk about what is a theory, because once again, this gets back into semantics. So we'll go back to our lovely friend Webster. 6 different definitions. So what they are thinking it is number 2, abstract thought. Now, I have an idea. I have a hypothesis that of gravity, of wave particles, of a lot of things. They're not using it correctly. We use it as a plausible or scientifically accepted general principle or body of principles offered to explain phenomena. So once everything goes through the scientific method, then you finally have a theory. A lot of scientists won't say fact. Gravity, we know about it, but there's so many problems with it that well, not problems, there's so many things we don't know that could completely turn the whole thing upside down that it's best to just call it a theory, otherwise you could look like a fool. So we tend to use that, and they tend to use the abstract thought. So where did you come from? How did you get here? This is has to do with the infinite regression argument, where, well, what's the smallest thing? It used to be an atom, and then we realized that it was the nucleus, and then we realized that it was protons, neutrons, and electrons that were small. And then we realized that inside those there's quarks. So you can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. Well, time is what a lot of people understand, and that's what they're really talking about with this, is, well, where did you come from? We tend to go back a little bit further and say, well, we go to the Big Bang. That's as far back as we can really take it. What happened before the Big Bang is speculation. We don't know for a fact, but that's okay. We can say I don't know. God of the gaps argument for them is that God did it, that God had a hand in it. So the Big Bang or the rapid expansion, the big expansion, or God. But the fun thing is that it's the same argument. We don't know what happened before the Big Bang, just like they don't know where God came from. So this is where you come into a common ground. Because that's the first thing I end up saying to people is, well, where did God come from? How old is God? When was he born? If they're going to try to use the time argument for infinite regression, then you can use it right against them. You know, who's God's dad and all that. So it's the same argument. So yeah, you come to a common ground, and it's fun to get them to admit that they just don't know, because the Bible doesn't cover that. It just assumes God's been eternal. We evolved from monkeys, and why are there still monkeys? Yeah. My favorite argument against that? Yeah. It's true. I mean, it just took a different path, and it all evolved from German, but German still exists. It's the same thing. So this is a lot of how creationists really think that evolution happens. They think it's usually a linear line, and you get a huge, rapid change from one to the next, and creating all these different species, but that's not really how it works. This is how it actually happens. So as you can see, all the colors, there's not a single color that is high contrast with each other. So as we start from here, and we go through the line, and we just kind of follow it all the way over to the other side, there's not a single color that's next to it that is a huge difference in hue. Enjoying the PowerPoint? So if we were to stretch that whole thing out, yes, it would be a straight linear line with a lot of branches that come off of it, but it's all has to do with mutations. It all has to do with a small mutation that caused basically caused speciation, so one thing to evolve differently than the rest. So completely different from the top. So subtle changes over time cause evolution. So hard concept for them to get. The cool thing is that if any of those fossils were found out of order, it would turn the whole thing upside down. So you have certain people over here that are evolutionary biologists. They look at a skeleton and they're like, oh, well, this looks exactly like this, and it should fit in this timeline, which means it's about this old. You have people over here throughout the entire world that know different dating methods on radioactive substances, and they can be able to take a look at it and figure out what the date is of. Completely separate from these guys. And they can go, oh, well, according to the dating methods, it should be about this age. It's always been the same. It always matches. If any one of those was found out of order, it would obviously cause a huge rift. But that's just simply not true. So the awesome thing is we have the fossils, so we win. We have fact. We have verifiable facts. And unfortunately, they have a book. They have a Bible, and they're going to stand to that. Then we move the goalposts, or they move the goalposts. Unless they prove it, then it was my plan. This is what the Pope is using right now, where he said, well, evolution is just the ultimate form of creationism. It was all started way back when, and God knew everything was going to evolve this way. So that's just moving the goalposts. All right. What do you think happens to you after you die? This is not a physical question. This is a spiritual question. We tend to kind of take it on a physical realm and say, oh, our bodies decompose, and we return to the elements and everything. That's beautiful and everything. But it's not really, in essence, what they're saying, because they think of the body as a vehicle, not necessarily of us. So they believe in soul. Well, doesn't apply to everybody. There's still people in AOK that believe in souls. They just don't believe in God. That's the only unifying thing we all have. They still believe in some kind of supernatural thing, not necessarily a God thing. But they're talking about a soul. Well, the cool thing is there's no proof for souls either. It's all a speculation thing. It's all a wishful thinking. Humans have a problem with our own mortality, and we want part of us to live on after we die. So. Those are the very most common questions that I get. Whenever I'm engaging with people and just kind of having a general discourse, I always try to be really nice and calm and quiet. But so after we end up getting through the basic questions, because they're almost always the first one to start it. They always, oh, you're an atheist? Hey, I got a good one. What happens to you after you die? Whenever I explain the dying thing, my favorite analogy is, because all this has happened to a lot of people, is you fall asleep at night, you go to sleep for 8 hours, you wake up and it feels like you just went to sleep. You seriously just went to bed and you pop right to. That time in the middle, you weren't aware of anything. So I use that as the common ground that's kind of like what death is. You're completely off. You don't care that you're off. You don't remember anything. You might be dreaming, but you don't remember when you wake up. But it's just an off situation. And a lot of people can understand that. The other thing is, well, what happened to you before you were born? Do you remember any of that? No. Okay, so why would you think anything happened to you after you died? It's a problem of mortality that we have. So once you end up engaging people with the questions they come to you, then there's a lot of things you can turn around on them, just to kind of get general conversation starters. God can read our minds, and he knows what it takes to make me believe. If I talk about the 7 deadly sins and the Pascal's wager of going up to heaven, and him being able to read your mind and knowing that you're faking. So with this, he knows what it takes to make me believe. If he can read my mind, then it's his fault that I'm an atheist. Either the plan is to make me an atheist, or he has presented me with everything that I needed to be where I am now. And he knows what choices I would have made before I would have made them, because he knows my thoughts. He can read my mind. So he made me an atheist. And so his purpose is to make me an atheist. Why? So it kind of boils down to this. Not only God knows the evidence I need to be convinced of his existence, and all-powerful God is able to provide that evidence. And all-loving God would want to. Another good question I like to ask, and it's not pointed in any way. It's not like, why are you Christian? It's just, okay, well, hey, you might I don't know anything about you, but can I ask you why you're Christian? And watch them fumble, because they've never been asked that before. A lot of them have, at least. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I go, well, Christian? Well, I have a relationship. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about what religion is. And you have a religion. Why do you subscribe to Christianity? Why do you believe he's the Son of God? Oh, because he is. Well, how do you know that Zeus is not, or any other gods? Just throw out any god. Zeus or Krishna or any of those. And I'm like, well, it's because God is the right one. Okay, well, so you don't know exactly why, because you never really looked out and tried to research these other religions. So why are you Christian? What version of Christianity do you subscribe to? And then just rattle off a couple. It doesn't really need to be a whole big comprehensive list. Just, well, which version do you subscribe to? And then ask them why. And then watch them fumble. Because they don't like that question either, because they were born into it. That's the main thing, what it boils down to. Their geographic location has given them their choice of religion. And they haven't gone outside of it their entire lives. That's their comfort zone. And they'll defend it and defend it and defend it, but they don't know a lot about their own religion. I'm not asking you to go out and know a lot about Baptist or Mormon, because they're the ones that really need to tell you why they believe this version over another. There's 33,000 different versions of Christianity. It's a huge number. So why are you choosing these most popular ones or these weird ones off to the side? And to kind of solidify that point, I usually like to use this one. If you were born in Cambodia, what religion would you be? I'm like, why are you asking me that? I don't care about Cambodia. Like, I know, but let's say you were outside the United States in a non-Christian nation. What religion would you be? I'd still be Christian. No. What if you were never presented with the Bible and you were doing the same thing that you're doing to Islam as being a Christian? What if you were Islam, or if you were Buddhism, which is what Cambodia, that's their national religion. Would you still go towards Christianity? You're completely isolated from it. Or how do you know you're going to do that? So that gets back into that whole Pascal's wager thing. Like, how do you know you're worshiping the right God? Kind of getting into some tips, not so much conversation starters anymore. Choose your battles wisely. We're going into the holiday season. That's kind of one reason why I really wanted to do this at this specific time, is we're going to be going to dinner with our religious relatives or friends. There's going to be work parties, and we're going to talk about how awesome Christ is and make sure that you're Christian. Choose your battles wisely. Know your employee handbook. That's one of the best things I can tell you. So know if somebody's discriminating against you, you're an atheist. It's still religious discrimination because you're not of their religion. So they can still end up getting fined or written up for things like that. If you go to your family's house and you have a mother or grandmother that's 90 years old and she's on her deathbed, is it really worth it to have that conversation? It doesn't prove any kind of point to have that conversation and tell her how wrong she is. You know, that might be the stress that puts her over the edge. So, friendships the same way. You know, if people aren't proselytizing, then don't proselytize to them. If they're downright rude and saying you should be this way, then okay, you can kind of fight back a little bit. Not fight back, but argue back a little bit. So when they post about God or church and they're not proselytizing, like I go and I say, I had a fun time with my atheist today. I'm not telling my friends that they should be an atheist. If I had a great time at a pizza meetup with my atheist friends, and I put that down, I'm not telling people they need to come to my pizza meetups. I'm simply saying I had fun. Now, if I was like, Christians are stupid, no, Christians are not stupid. Then they can, whenever I was a Christian, I wasn't stupid. I just wasn't presented with the same arguments. I hadn't thought about it the same way, because I was pretty young. There's a lot of people that are isolated from that. And so I was presented with different scenarios for that, to get me away from that. And at no point was I ever stupid. I'm still the same person. Even when I was a little kid and I was religious. So that's kind of the thing. If you kind of get that out of your head, Christians are not stupid, that'll help you progress a little bit and kind of realize that they're people. You might be the only person that Christian has ever met that's an atheist. So, helps out. When talking with other people, not necessarily coworkers and people like that, but if they're being unreasonable and you're giving them fact and philosophy questions and all the things that we've covered, and they're still not listening and they're just basically la 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 la, you're kind of done. There's really no point to go further. You're just going to piss them off. You're just going to make them unfriend you. You're just going to end up having problems with your coworkers over it. Sometimes the only time I ever really keep pushing on with the whole unreasonable people is even though I'm not making any headway and they are getting kind of irritated, but there's a crowd forming. I like that. I don't like talking. I don't like approaching people. I'm not a proselytizer, I'm a counter-proselytizer. So if somebody comes at me and trying to tell me about Jesus, I love taking up their time. Because that means that's fewer chances that they're going to go out and try to convert other people. So even in instances that happened not too recently, where I thought the lady wasn't really listening to what I was saying, she was being really nice and being really gentle, but the more I was talking to her, the bigger the crowd got. And anytime I said anything that was pretty factual, they would go. When I quoted the Bible back to the lady and told her, no, you're wrong, it actually says this. So I'm flipping through, trying to find different things. That's the only time I really kind of stay with it. And I talked about choosing your battles wisely. Don't waste your time with unreasonable people. Even though I didn't make any headway with her, I could have planted the seed with those people. I could have been the one atheist that they've ever met, and I was just a shining example of a calm, nice atheist. I wasn't rude, I wasn't evil, I wasn't really disrespectful, which is what a lot of people in church end up hearing about atheists. On television they hear about atheists being really rude and mean. Just learn what your stereotype is. Never argue with someone who's paid to have a certain opinion. We ran into this not too long ago. When at the picture you saw, that was at a dinosaur debate, where the guy said, part of his slide was how atheism's attack on America. And I didn't really talk about it too much, but he's paid to go on a book tour. There's nothing you're going to say to that man to make him go, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, pack it up. My tour. No, he's got to go to something else after that. So he's paid to have that certain position. All of these people are the same way. You might recognize at least a couple of them, I hope. But it's hard to explain science to two different groups of people, those without the capacity to understand, and those who are getting paid not to learn. If you have an audience and you get caught in a situation where you're talking to somebody, then yeah, that's okay to keep going if there's an audience, but otherwise you're just kind of wasting your time in a sense. My favorite thing to do is find a story in the Bible and debunk it. So many people just say the Bible is infallible. Remember that circular reasoning argument? If you can tear that down, the circular reasoning goes away. Well, you just said, so the Bible isn't infallible if I can prove to you different things that didn't happen, that just don't make sense. So different things like Adam and Eve didn't understand right from wrong, but were expected to behave right or wrong, and they did the wrong thing and were punished for it. What? That doesn't make any kind of logical sense whatsoever. Something that's a lot easier is Noah's Ark. Kind of a crappy picture, sorry, but so the Titanic, much larger than Noah's Ark, is at the largest dimensions that a cubit could be used as. At the largest dimensions, that's the maximum that it could ever be. And this only had provisions for a couple weeks, and it had to have provisions for a year. Rained for 40 days, 40 nights, they got stuck on top of a mountain, they had to wait it out. Not only do you have to have pairs of animals so that they can inbreed and replicate and try to populate the rest of the world. You had to bring not only 2 gazelles, but you had to bring plenty of gazelles for the lions to eat during that whole time. And then what were the gazelles, the extra gazelles that you brought on board? What are they going to eat? Global flood. Absolutely no geological evidence for a global flood. Easy. They'll try to use things like Pangea and say, oh, well, it was a one land mass was all together. Well, the dates don't line up for that. Sorry. You know, to have animals like polar bears and penguins next to each other next to giraffes, completely different climate, it just doesn't work. It makes sense when you think about it, like, okay, 2,000 years ago, desert-dwelling people wrote the Bible. Well, that makes sense. They probably didn't know about polar bears and penguins and things like kangaroos that were indigenous to Australia and, you know, all these different things that now that story breaks apart. And people still try to hold on to it. But if you can break that down, you just move forward. The Egyptians were really awesome about writing things down and keeping a really good log of everything. There's no evidence of a mass exodus from Egypt. And you think that they would have written something like that down? No. We did something wrong, these people revolted, they left, we need to make sure we don't do that again. There's no evidence for that. We have huge records, and there's not even a gap where like it might have been taken out by somebody. Another story, Tower of Babel, completely historically inaccurate. Why? I don't know how many people know about the Tower of Babel. It's not one that's widely talked about because it's easily debunked. Prior to the Tower of Babel, it's in the Bible that everybody had one language throughout the entire globe. One language. And then for some reason, God got mad that they built the tower and made tiers that he ended up making them all have completely different languages so that they could no longer communicate with each other. But that's historically inaccurate. We can be able to trace a lot of religion or a lot of languages back and see how they evolved and everything. And so that kind of throws that whole story out. One of my absolute favorites is Genesis, page 1. Open up the book, it's there. So the order of creation for the universe is wrong. Planets and stars. So the difference between the biblical order and the observed order. So we'll go through biblical order. First the earth, then the sky, then the land and plants, then the sun, moon, and other stars. That's the important one. Sea creatures, then land creatures. The observed order, first the universe, then the stars were formed out of that. And we're talking 13.7 billion years, skip forward about 3 billion years, and we start getting some of our first stars. Correct me, JR, if I'm wrong. Then after that, we get our sun, which comes 9 billion years after the universe was created. Then the earth is about that same time. The moon, sea creatures, land creatures. That's the problem right there. So they have the earth being created first, which is just completely asinine, because then you didn't have the sun or anything. And this is where early Christians, early science evolved from the Christian text, where it said that the sun revolved around the earth. A lot of people have heard that. Well, that's the reason why. It's because that's how the biblical order goes through. But then we break it down to sun, moon, and stars. The stars and our sun, and then the earth, then the moon. So it's completely out of order. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's not meant to be taken literally. Really, it's written. This is what happened on the first day. This is the second day. It's not allegorical. It's there, first page. Plus it goes to that. Arrogant opinion that the universe was not created for us. So to think that there's a large amount of the universe that we haven't even seen yet, but yet for some reason God created all of it for us on this little bitty blip on the outside of that, of the spiral arm, and inside that spiral arm is our solar system, and it's all supposed to be for us. That's the definition of arrogant for me. Also on Genesis page 1, the moon doesn't make its own light. It talks about the moon governing over the night. There's 2 great lights, and that would be the sun and the moon. And then the moon is a second greater light, but there's sometimes twice in a month where the moon's on the other side of the earth, not even producing any light. It doesn't produce light, it reflects light. That's the other thing. So yes, that could be a translation, but it's in every single version that I've been able to find. Bible Gateway, I should put that link up here. Bible Gateway is an awesome resource because you can research over 100 different versions of the Bible. You can click one verse and compare it to all the other ones and find out if they're trying to take it allegorical, if it's meant to be literal. And intelligent design. A lot of people wearing glasses in here. Yeah, I've had conversations with people, and the guy that we went to not too long ago at the church for intelligent design, talking about dinosaurs and how everything evolved in the biblical fashion. It was a Christian event for Christians, but we showed up. So we talked about intelligent design with him, and yeah, he wore glasses, and that was one of the things I pointed out. I was like, you're intelligently designed, but you need corrective lenses. It's like, have you ever had your molars taken out, your wisdom teeth, or anything like that? Oh yeah. Why would he put that in you? That doesn't seem like a very intelligent thing. There was a website, and I just remember this not too long ago after I built this, but it went through and it said, if we were to redesign intelligently a human being, how would we do that? It would end up being really ugly because we would have wings and we would have hawk eyes and we would have a blowhole because dolphins can eat and breathe at the same time. It makes sense that we would have wings and we would have eyes of a hawk, or an octopus also has really good eyes. We would have tentacles because, more arms the better. So like an intelligently designed human, and we don't exist inside of an actually intelligently designed human. Males have nipples. Plus, why would he make you allergic to nature? So, talking donkeys and snakes. Yeah. So when you're engaging with people, there's a lot of things that you can bring up. There's a lot of the questions that you're going to get from people. These are very common rebuttals. There's good questions to ask people. But the main thing is kind of keep calm, be nice, don't be your stereotype when you're talking to these people. And you might be the only atheist that they've ever met in their entire lives, and you want to leave a good impression. We've taken polls on the AOK Facebook page and outside of that on Meetup whenever it was prior to the AOK Facebook page. And we talked to people, how did you come to atheism? How did you come to agnosticism or skepticism? From the people that were Christian. We wanted to know what got them away. And at the moment that they were having the conversation, nobody's ever converted another person. Like right then, it usually is planting the seed of doubt. It usually might take a couple hours for them to go home and research and verify, you were right. It might take days, it might take years, but it's always fun to hear stories come from atheists in our group and that say that, oh, well, I talked to an atheist a really long time ago and I'll always remember that person. I know several people in here that are that way. They talked to one atheist and they left a really good impression, and anytime a preacher said anything about atheists being liars and unhappy people and all of that, they remember that one person because they left a good impression. So that's a big thing is, you're an atheist, you seem so nice. We're going into the holiday season, and one of the big things is you're going to hear a lot of people talking about church and things like that. It kind of goes back to they're not really proselytizing. It's in their culture to say Merry Christmas. You wish somebody a good night, even though you're not going with them for their night, you're not sharing that night. You wish somebody happy birthday, even though it's not your birthday, but it's the birth of their Savior, so they say Merry Christmas. And it's not an offensive thing, it's really not. You can say Merry Christmas, you wish somebody a happy birthday, the same thing with Merry Christmas. That might cause a little bit of people going, I don't know about that, but really that's kind of what it boils down to. You can wish them a Merry Christmas, it doesn't hurt anything. If they say, well, you have a Merry Christmas too, if you want, you can politely say, well, I'm an atheist, I don't really celebrate it the same way you do, but I don't mean something important to you. And I've used that before, it's pretty nice. Thank you for your attention.